Facilities Committee meeting agenda for meeting for Wednesday, October 19th to order. Let me lead us in a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we're thankful for this day. We're thankful for the cool weather. We're thankful for the community we live in. Be with all our customers, and thank you that we can all work together as a team to provide safe drinking water and good wastewater treatment for all of our customers. Help us be good stewards of the money that we get from our customers and use it in the wisest method. Be with our meeting and help us as we guide us as we go about the business of Joint Water and Sewer Commission. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Amen.
No public comment. The first item on the agenda is minutes from September 14th, 2022 Facilities Committee meeting.
I'll move to accept the minutes as submitted.
I'll second the motion.
Motion is second. All in favor? Motion carries 3-0. Next item is contract award Glenn Place Mall and Oglethorpe Elevated Storage Tanks Rehabilitation Project. Mr. Burrs.
Yes, sir. On Thursday, September 1st, we went out for bids for the blasting to bare metal and repainting of 2 elevated storage tanks, the one at Glenn Place Mall, which is visible from the spur, and the Oglethorpe tank on the north end of St. Simons that most people don't even realize is there. We had site visits on September the 20th to give people an opportunity to see the work, including some of the electrical and conduit removal and replacement needs that were in the bid. We received 4 bids, with the low bidder being Tank Pro at $1,396,617. Tank Pro was the contractor that completed the last 2 tank paintings that we awarded 2 years ago. If you recall, we were awarded one of the Tank of the Year awards by Tanemic for that painting job. And so staff recommends moving forward with this. I will say this is about $400,000 over budget for these tanks. These are both 500,000 gallon storage tanks. To show you how much things have changed in the last couple of years, 2 years ago, we painted a 3/4 gallon tank with the exact same coating system for $550,000. And now 2 500,000 gallon tanks are averaging $700,000 a piece. So this is over budget. However, we will take the excess funds for this project out of the R&R reserve to cover.
I'll offer the motion. I'll move that the Facilities Committee recommend to the full commission award a contract in the amount of $1,396,617 to Tank Pro Incorporated for the elevated storage tank rehabilitation project for Glen Place Mall and Oglethorpe sites.
I'll second the motion.
Motion second. Any questions?
I will say one of the requests, as included in here, that we asked for an alternate for a higher quality finish coat that's supposed to last an extra 5 years. Tank Pro's original bid included the higher quality finish coat in there. The other providers had an adder in there for that, but Tank Pro's included that, and that has been confirmed by our purchasing department.
Okay.
This is the company that did the other 2 tanks?
This is the company that did the other 2 tanks. So we suspect we'll get pretty much the exact same personnel that did that. Our project manager on this is Mr. Vo. He's very familiar with them, worked with them well in the last project. We expect this to be a successful project moving forward.
As I understand, Andrew, they're typically work in our region in the wintertime, so we would expect them to start about when?
Probably December, January timeframe. Likely January, just because a lot of contractors don't do a lot of work in December, so likely first of the year before they would get here.
Okay. And the 2 neighbors that we have there, one is a Baptist church and the other is elementary school.
Right.
And so I presume they'll have a shielding curtain over the entire.
Yes, what they do with these tanks, it's kind of interesting. They put these curtains up and you don't really see what's going on, and then they take the curtains down.
And it's done.
And it's done. So it's an interesting little process there. So yes, these will be curtained, particularly while they're blasting or spraying any paint.
And I would offer a recommendation for your operations folks, Jason particularly, if he would contact at least the school principal there,
right,
to let them know what's going to be happening. And there are no issues, but just in case they see the crew up on the tank.
Absolutely. So once we get a firm start date from their schedule, we'll make sure to schedule with those key stakeholders near the tanks and make sure everybody knows when we're going to start. Usually a tank takes 60 to 90 days to get completed. So they'll be working on these concurrently. Because they're on separate systems, it doesn't hurt us to have two of them down at the same time.
So they leave the curtain up the entire time they're doing the work?
As long as they're spraying or blasting,
Spraying,
so you
yeah.
don't get the overspray.
And then kind of like a magic trick, you just drop it and it's done, right? Is that it?
You do think they're gonna be doing both tanks at the same time?
That was the request by the contractor, and we think that would be an effective way of doing it. That way, for our next item, for the inspection services, they're doing the hold point inspections at the same time, and he doesn't have to make additional trips.
Is there gonna be a
Now-
logo on the,
It'll be our logo on
on
the tanks.
both of them?
Yes.
Now, I got the Oglethorpe tank, is that gonna create any pressure problems when that's down?
We'll be able to maintain the pressure with local pressure monitors within the system, but the Demery tank, which currently isn't used because of elevation differences between the Oglethorpe tank and the Demery tank, the Demery tank will be able to be used while the Oglethorpe tank is down.
We were gonna put a pressure reducing valve to allow that, wasn't we?
We're still working through that, working with Glynn County on making those improvements with the intersection design at Sea Island and Frederica, because that's where the line is that would be the easiest to actually separate it. And so we want to include that into the intersection improvement project they're doing at that intersection.
And did we look at a water model to make sure that when this tank's out, that we'll be able to provide water?
We
In
have,
case of a fire and everything?
we have not updated the model with this tank out, but that can certainly be done before we actually take it down.
Okay. I think we need to do that just in case
Yes, sir.
and notify the fire department.
The fire department certainly is notified when we take tanks down. Yes, sir.
Any other questions?
None from me.
I'm good.
All in favor? Motion carries 3-0. Next item is contract award engineering services, elevated storage tank painting. Mr. Burrs?
Yes, sir. The inspection of elevated storage tanks is kind of a niche field, and we have used Chapman Technical Services for many years to provide ongoing inspection services during the years to tell us what the rehab priorities are and the defects that we may need to encounter. And he also does some basic maintenance tasks for us while he's there. So the request here is actually to award a separate contract to Chapman Technical Services to perform the construction inspection services during the tank painting that was just awarded. Mr. Chapman will be in and out of town. He will not be here the entire time, but he'll be here at key hold points to make sure that the blast coat, any welding that's done, and each individual coat of paint that goes on meets requirements before they move on to the next level. So the total contract award would be for $27,000 for both. This is a combo for both tanks, which is actually $2,500 less than the last time we had him do two tank projects like this. So a slight reduction in Mr. Chapman's cost, but we've been very pleased with his work to date on these elevated storage tanks.
Can I have a motion?
I'll move that the Facilities Committee recommend that the full commission award a contract in the amount of $27,000 to Chapman Technical Services LLC for construction inspection services for the elevated storage tank rehabilitation for the Glen Place Mall and Oglethorpe sites.
Second.
Motion second. Any questions? When he's here, will Jason be kind of shadowing him?
He will be on site. Jason will not be climbing the tank at this point, but he will be on site.
Thank
certainly.
you. That's why we have this guy.
With safety harness and everything?
We could allow him to climb the tank if he so desired, with the safety harnesses and everything, yes, sir.
Do we have anybody in our employee that's ever climbed this tank?
We have, to my knowledge, at least one person that has climbed, or 3 people that have climbed the tank before, and one of them sitting right there.
I think it'd be good for him to climb the tank, with Ed being there.
It might be, we could
And he
see,
can always go up inside on the leg.
yeah, inside
the
for, we
column.
could look at something like that. We'll see if he's comfortable with doing that, yes, sir. Yes, now we have drones we do that with.
Yeah, but drones don't see the inside either. It's when you climb over that dome and get in that hatch, that's what's the fun part. Okay. Any other questions?
None from me.
I'm good.
All in favor indicate by raising your right hand. Motion carries 3-0. Next item is the contract award engineering services for Brunswick Villa Area Sewer Extension Project.
Yes, sir. While I'm talking, I'm going to get Mr. Klein. Could you pull up the location so that we know what we're talking about here? Brunswick Villa is an historic neighborhood just outside the city limits. Encompasses the neighborhoods and streets off of Townsend Street between Altama Avenue and the railroad spur that goes up Whitlock. We have a well site right at the end of this property. There are approximately 200 parcels in this area that do not have access currently to public sewer. It does have access to public water, but we are requesting an analysis to confirm if there's any necessary fire flow improvements in the area. And this is a project that's very much in line with our strategy in recent years to provide services to currently unserved areas that are adjacent to the existing public systems. We've went out for proposals on September the 2nd and had a pre-proposal conference. It was not a mandatory pre-proposal conference, but we did have quite good attendance with 17 firms in attendance. We received 6 proposals on October the 6th. We actually backed that up a couple of days because of potential impacts from Hurricane Ian. 3 people scored with representatives from engineering and senior leadership of these 6 proposals, and the highest scoring proposal was from Kimley Horn and Associates with an average score of 93. One of the items that is included in this proposal is full-time construction inspection services. Previously, and for the duration of my time here, we've requested them give 20 hours a week of construction inspection budget. And what we requested here was then provide a budget for 20 hours and for 40 hours. And based off the cost difference for 20 versus 40, staff is recommending we move forward with the 40 hours of construction time. So there'll be somebody on site the entire time they're working. Will allow our staff to be freed up from having to be so much on site with these projects and can get to other tasks. So this is funded capital project in the capital plan that was provided earlier this year. The total budget amounts to $2.75 million. The engineering cost, including the 40 hours a week of construction inspection services, is $486,780. We have worked with Kimley Horn recently. They completed pump station upgrade design for pump station 3101, 4001, and 4002, which we will be putting out for bid in a couple of weeks. And we had very good success with them during the engineering process, and staff feels comfortable moving forward with them with this project. Based off of their proposal and the expected time for completion, the contract will be for 180 days from notice to proceed to providing a bid-ready package for us to put out for construction award, sorry. I will say we got 6 proposals, all very good proposals. I don't think anybody had anybody here that was a negative by any stretch of the imagination, so very happy with the quality of the consultants that are trying to work with us these days.
Nice to see a larger group.
It's a good group.
Bids, yeah.
I will say, if you look at the scoring sheet, pricing was 15 points, so you'll see that Kimley Horn got 14 points on pricing. So that means that there was one firm that was slightly lower cost. It was about a $10,000 difference in cost. So based off of the small difference in cost for the proposals, we felt comfortable moving forward with Kimley Horn on this job.
Can I have a motion?
I'll move that the Facilities Committee recommend that the full commission award a contract in the amount of $486,780 to Kimley Horn and Associates, Inc. for engineering and construction inspection services for the Brunswick Villa Area Sewer Extension Project.
Second.
Motion and second. Any questions?
We'll say Mr. Klein's got it pulled up there. If you have any questions there, you see a lot of blue lines but no green lines on there. Blue lines are water, so they do have water service. So this, based off of the elevations we have of the manholes you do see on there towards the side of the work, it appears this should be able to be served all with gravity sewer without having to include any more pump stations. So just one of those random pockets in our area that never got sewered.
Now, where is it? What encompasses the area? Draw a circle around the whole area, Todd, where it's sewered.
Right.
Especially between Altama, between Altama
it, but that first street right there by the railroad tracks already has sewer, so it's actually one street over.
Are those all single-family homes?
Most of those are single family. Some of that right there on Itama is commercial.
Yeah.
It's probably 90% single family, or some duplexes that are on the southern portion of it. But
And it's going to be gravity lines, right?
Yes, sir.
And they're not going to put it in the center of the roads?
We're definitely going to try to avoid having to put it in the center of the road. Yes, sir.
I understand that.
On the inspection services, first off, did we get a breakdown on the proposals for how much was design and how much was
Yes.
construction administration and
Yes, sir.
how much was inspection?
Yes, sir.
Were they all pretty much,
They were similar, you know, some were a little higher than others, but they were similar. I don't remember exactly what the breakdown was on this, but we can certainly have that for you tomorrow for the difference between design and inspection.
and the approval, do we have a right to approve the inspector they're using?
They have submitted in their proposal who their proposed inspectors were. We're familiar with both of the individuals and have worked with them on past projects. And that was actually one of the things that we liked about their proposals was we were familiar with their inspectors. If they're going to be out there 40 hours a week, being our eyes and ears in the field, having somebody we're comfortable with was a big help.
Okay, is the inspection an hourly rate or is it an inspection?
Hourly rate, the inspection services are hourly rate not to exceed the total amount allotted.
Okay, so if the contractor's only working 30 hours a week,
Right. He's only for hours that he's on site. And if they're just setting up silt fence and things like that, they're not going to be out there doing that.
Right.
It's just when they're laying pipe.
so in that regard, we would have no need to have our inspectors, our
We may do
employees.
a drive-by just to check in with the on-site inspector, but our inspectors internally and our project managers won't have to spend near as much time on these jobs if we do this.
Okay.
We perform the same services at the wastewater plant, given the scope of that project, and that's been successful without having to be as time-intensive as some of our other capital projects have been for us.
and so it's construction management, they'll be doing all of that also.
Yes, sir. So construction management, reviewing all the RFIs, invoices, any requested change orders and all that, that's a separate pot of money from the inspection services.
And the bidding, will they be involved with the
Yes.
bidding?
They will be involved with bidding and will provide a letter of recommendation. Once bids are received, they'll review the bids and provide a letter of recommendation.
All right.
It's safe to assume that the inspector would, if anything comes up, they would immediately notify us.
Yes,
Right.
absolutely.
So it'll be
One of the inspectors has been around Glynn County for 30 years,
okay.
maybe more. So he's got pretty much everybody in Todd's group and my phone number if he needs anything.
But, yeah, I think that's one of the key things is to know who the inspector is going to be there because that way we can have faith in that being done correctly and good. Very good with that.
Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor? Motion carries 3-0. Next item is contract award administration building painting services. Mr. Burrows?
Yes, sir. At part of the 23 capital projects plan, we had budgeted some money to make some improvements to our facilities. If you recall, we've awarded a contract to replace the HVAC units at the Academy Creek, or install HVAC units at the Academy Creek warehouse. We've also done a smaller award for a overhead door replacement at the Harrington warehouse. And this request is to actually paint the administration building. We got quotes. There's some slight stucco issues that need to be repaired. Pressure wash the building and repaint it, new coat of paint on it. They actually received 3 quotes on this, including that the low quote here is from C. Merrill Construction. They are the contractor that is currently performing the Board of Elections rehab that the county is providing. So while they were on site, we asked them for a quote. They're just going to include it in what they were going to do and charge us for the areas outside of the Board of Elections. And so that's why we were able to get a very cost-effective quote from them. So it's a $30,000 budget to paint this, a $30,000 award to paint the entire building. And so staff recommends moving forward with C. Merrill Construction for the stucco repair and painting services for the building.
I'll offer the motion. Move that the Facilities Committee recommend that the full commission award award a contract in the amount of $30,000 to C. Merrill Construction for stucco repair and painting services for the administration building.
I'll second that motion.
Motion is second. Any questions?
I have a question. Who's on the color selection committee?
I don't know that that's been determined. I suspect we will be going back with the color that's already there,
All right.
unless we have some harsh feelings that we need to change it.
Okay. I mean, it's a consideration for, fitting in with the neighborhood and everything.
Right, so certainly we'll work with what they were planning to do with the Board of Elections building to make sure it all ties together as one cohesive unit.
Okay.
When are they scheduled to start this work, and when would it be completed?
I believe that the most recent update was they expected the Board of Elections to be able to be moved into by the first of the year. So, given that, if they're gonna paint it all in one time, I expect it to be painted in the next couple of months.
And how are we gonna handle people coming and going into the office while this is being done?
Well, directly in front of the building, when we have to paint it above that, that'll have to be done after hours, or on the weekends. But everything else will, make sure that we've got adequate protection so that it's not spraying anybody when they're coming in. So we should be fine on
They
that.
can always roll it.
Always roll it if necessary, right? Particularly on the front parts.
Yeah.
And that'll prevent overspray on the concrete having to be blasted off too.
Mm-hmm. And on people's cars.
And the same contractor already has a contract with the county.
Already has a contract with the county for their work.
But we'll have a separate contract.
We'll have a separate contract, that is correct. These improvements that we're doing will be a big help, and hopefully, we gotta do one more door replacement is what I recall, and then hopefully we'll be making some stormwater improvements to our back parking lot after that. So that's the next major item you may see coming here. So people don't have to wear rain boots every time it rains to come in the back door.
Bob, did you read both of the estimates to make sure they're providing the same scope?
I'm looking at it now, and I think what they're offering is in the hunt for the scope of work and the price.
Their proposal just does not go into the detail that the others do.
Right, the first proposal is a little bit shorter.
Yeah, the key on this one is just to be sure we have somebody looking at it, be sure they actually do put a first and a second full coat.
Yes.
That's the only critical thing that I see.
Okay.
It's just a inspection point.
How do we select these three contractors or did we advertise this, or did we just contact them?
We contacted them directly on these, because we weren't sure about the dollar value. If it's under $100,000, we don't have to put it out for bid for 30 days. And then, of course, when they started working next door, we just stopped by one day and talked with the foreman and got a contact information to see if they would quote the job.
And what did we tell them so that we're sure they're bidding apples and apples?
That we showed them the places of stucco that needed to be repaired, that we wanted the building pressure washed, and that we wanted it painted with 2 coats of paint.
Yeah, the two bids that are close together, in my view, those are good competitive bids for the work. And the third one to offer is way out of market.
And when do we anticipate it starting?
Hopefully before the end of the year, because if they're planning, I don't know if they'll hit the schedule, but from what we're being told, they're gonna be moving into the board election first of the year.
Because he said they have enough paint on hold for 2 weeks. If you'd like for us, no, that's the other one, okay. So I guess the low bidder will have enough, he can get the paint, I guess.
He didn't seem to indicate it would be a problem.
Yeah, it's the supply chain has improved for paint products remarkably.
That's one area it's gotten better.
Well, on a commercial project I had, we were buying paint 6 months in advance. We're trying to. And now it's,
6 months?
Yes,
Wow.
that was over a year ago. That's how bad it was. And now, it's, you know, you're talking about days to be able to get it.
Oh, okay.
Any other questions?
None for me.
Hearing none, all in favor? Motion carries 3-0. Next item is change order number 1, Arco Water and Sewer Improvements Project. Mr. Klein?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Turn my mic on. Good afternoon. This is change order number 1 for Arco Area Water and Sewer Extension Project. The bulk of this change order request circles around water line. And quick little brief on here. We did receive a change order number 1 recommendation letter from the engineer record Thomas and Hutton, and it requested additional funds in the amount of $166,003.78. That's for an additional 2,600 linear feet of 8-inch PVC water main. The reason why we're asking for this now is that was in the original design, but that amount was not included on the bid form. So this is to bring the total amount of water line to be constructed up to the original design plan. There's also a little bit in here for a little bit of sewer extension to serve 2 homes, and then some clearing and grubbing that is part of last month's approval when we accepted some easements from one of the local property owners there, or several of the local property owners. This is clearing and grubbing to facilitate that reroute of the sewer extension. That was an effort to avoid some paving costs, which we'll still see savings from. The last thing in this change order is 135 days of additional contract time. Contractors provided documentation to that effect. Supply chain issues, in particular manhole structures, some piping issues, but it's amazing how long it takes to get concrete precast structures at this time.
The pipe was on the ground for several weeks before the structures showed up.
That's correct. That's correct. So staff's recommendation is to prevent additional delays in the project and get these customers tied on is to approve this change order in the amount of $166,003.78 and 135 additional days added to the contract time. I will note that the engineer of record is working with us and staff's working with them. As it was omitted from the bid form, they're going to work with us to recover the additional costs, which you'll note here. When we had to go back to the contractor for the additional water line, prices had increased. So it was another $5.42 a linear foot. So our engineer of record is committed to work with us to absorb that additional cost above the original bid per linear foot.
Can I have a motion?
I'll move that the Facilities Committee recommend approval of change order number 1 to the Arco Area Water and Sewer Extension to UWS Inc. to increase the contract amount by $166,003.78 and contract time by 135 consecutive calendar days.
Second.
Motion second. Any questions?
I have a question. So this was omitted on the original bid list? Okay.
Correct, sir. On the bid form,
On the bid
when
form.
we accept the bids, open them, read through them, that bid form that the contractors submitting a bid will fill out. The unit or the quantity was incorrect. The quantity didn't match the actual linear feet that was shown on the design plans. So the contractor bid it as it was requested on the bid form, which unfortunately was short the amount, the total amount that was shown on the design plans.
So
Did
when
you
we put out
review-
the bid, then it was not the correct amount. Is that correct?
Yes,
And
that's correct.
everybody bid the incorrect amount.
Everybody did. It was.
Now, in the proposal form, generally it says those are estimated quantities. The contractor is responsible for installing the exact amount, whatever it ends up being.
That's
But
correct.
it's never exactly correct.
Correct.
So, was that in the proposal form?
Yes, sir. That was in there, and of course, if it's a few hundred, 100 feet one way or another, we would just use it as a linear, the unit cost, but given the large amount and the increase in pipe cost since they bid that, having to order more pipe, they requested the change order here. And like Mr. Klein said, our engineering partner has agreed to work with us on offsetting some of these charges due to the oversight on their part.
Well, it's also the contractor's responsibility to during the bidding process, to let you know if there's something needs to be adjusted also.
That is certainly something that,
I'm not sure necessarily that we should throw all this back to the engineer.
well,
If it had not been for supply chain, if it had been the correct number, all we're paying for is the difference in the cost. He just did not order enough pipe.
right, so what
So,
yes, we're not putting all of this on the engineer. Basically, it's that $5 and change a foot that we're requesting from the engineer.
I'm just questioning whether we need to ask him for that money.
Don't want to ask them for that money? We don't have to. I'm sure that that would be,
Do you want to ask them for the money?
I don't.
You don't want to ask the engineer?
No, I'm not sure that the engineer, the quantities are estimated quantities.
Okay.
Every quantity on there.
Right.
Most of them are not gonna be exactly what the bid form shows.
that's correct.
Now, this is a bigger quantity than normal. I don't know, how many total feet of water line were we putting in?
This was about 2/3 of the total amount, water line. So,
2/3.
yeah. So it was a little more than a rounding error.
The additional 2,600 feet represents 2/3 of the total
It's-
linear feet of the water line.
I believe it's a majority of the, total amount.
I don't remember.
I can get it exact.
That's a big miss.
Was, yes, sir.
And we feel like with these other changes, it's gonna come in under project cost?
No, sir, it's not gonna this will, they'll eat all of the we're not gonna come in under the original bid amount, no, sir.
I think the way that it's, the recommendation's worded in here, that we say we'll work with the EOR to determine their contribution towards. So I think there's some flexibility in there. We don't necessarily,
Yeah,
we're not encumbering them to cover all of the difference of the price increase.
yeah,
But, so there's some flexibility in there, but they're committed to working with us.
okay.
But no, so this 166, this will all be absorbed in the contract, so we'll come in above the original bid amount. We didn't have, anywhere near that kind of as-needed items in there to cover this amount of work.
But we also say in here that some of this is gonna save some additional cost anyway.
Some of the paving costs, which
So
we
save some
we haven't
paving
got that
costs.
quantified yet.
So it might be less than the 166.
It should be a little less than the 166, yes, sir.
Yeah,
To that point, and kind of leading into, there'll be a future discussion as well, this ongoing project on the sewer side of things. So correct, there's a little bit of redesign that's going on right now due to some unforeseens and different improvements we can do, working with the engineer. So next month, we'll likely have some conversation on additional sewer.
but this project started out just being for sewering ARCO. The water lines, are they being put into areas that did not have water?
That's correct. Where there was, most of ARCO, if I remember correctly, there's about 400 parcels that didn't have access to sewer, and I think 50 or 60 that didn't have access to water.
And those 50 will have to connect to our water system.
Whenever they do pull any sort of permitting for their house, yes, they'll be required to connect to the water system.
But they don't have to right now.
County ordinance says that we can require people to connect to systems within 60 days. That has not been our practice. Our practice has been that once their existing infrastructure fails and they've tried to pull a permit to put another well in or replace their septic tank, that's when we force them to tie into our system.
The water lines for the services, are they putting in the services across the roads and thing on this project?
They are, yes, sir.
The services will already be there. We won't have to cut any more asphalt. We'll just be able to tie in new meters when people come into the system.
but this does not include the meters.
This does not include the meters, no, sir. Those would be brought in when the customer wants to get on the system.
Yeah, that cost will be addressed at that time
That's correct.
with the capital investment fee or impact fee and the cost of the meter.
That's correct, and recall, we started a program where existing structures can finance that charge.
Right.
So, honestly, that program was put into place to benefit a lot of people, but for these type projects was where it was gonna be most impactful. So we're excited to, once this project gets finished, to have people take advantage of that opportunity.
In the future, when we get 30 and 60 and 90% review plans, do we get a updated cost estimate from the engineer at that time?
That is, yes, sir.
See, at that time, then we could check those items of that too.
The market changes so fast, it only makes, sense to do that at every
Normally
chance.
it wouldn't change, but,
Right.
all right. Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor? Motion carries 3-0.
Thank you.
Next item is the paving services pump station 2002 force main replacement. Mr. Burris?
Yes, sir. Pump Station 2002 is located on Arnold Road on St. Simons, near the intersection of Ocean Boulevard and Arnold Road. It's right there by Fiddler's Restaurant, if you're familiar with that restaurant. The existing iron force main leaving the station has reached the end of its useful life and needs replacement. TR Long Engineering has designed improvements and originally scheduled for the force main for replacement in the northern shoulder of Arnold Road. We solicited bids there, but the project cost came in substantially over budget at that time. And so we came back, asked TR Long to redesign it in the north travel lane because of the congestion that's in the shoulder. We came back, and working with our crews, we believe that our internal crews will be able to self-install approximately 1,000 feet of force main along Arnold Road. And that basically from the pump station to the intersection with Demery Road. That work will kick off October 31st. That date was selected because that is the Monday after Georgia-Florida weekend. So obviously, we're trying to do this with little disruption as possible. We will actually be having rolling each day, short sections of one travel lane will be closed down. We'll install 100 or so, maybe 200, depending on how it's going, feet a day. We will cold patch the entire section and get that road back open by the end of the day. The next day, we'll come in and do the same thing for the next 100 or 200 feet. So it's going to be a rolling, instead of shutting down the full sections of Arnold Road, and it'll be a one-lane closure with flagmen for that. So I will note that after we self-install the pipe here, we will have to go out for bid to directionally drill approximately 300 feet of force main along Demery Road. And then we'll have a contractor at that time actually make the 3 points of connection. There'll be the one at the pump station, the one at Demery Road and Arnold, and the one at Demery Road with it tie to the existing force main right there at where Mallory and Demery tie together. So it's about 1,300 total feet. We're going to self-install 1,000. This request is to actually have somebody come in scheduled November 14th, which is 2 weeks after we get started, to come in and actually repave Arnold Road after we get finished. We're going to cold patch it. We requested contractors come in, mill the entire area, and repave so that it is uniform. And because we're going to try to stay in one travel lane, but we may have to deviate depending on what we find in the ground, we're going to pave shoulder to shoulder on Arnold Road for the 1,000 feet that we have. Trying to get paving contractors has been a tremendous challenge for us. We were finally able to get 2 quotes from 2 contractors, Allen Owens Construction and Platinum Paving. Lowest cost was Allen Owens Construction at $95,375. They have committed to beginning paving on November the 14th. Found out this morning the Platinum Paving is now wavering on whether they can be there the 14th or not. So given the lower cost and the commitment to be there on the 14th, staff recommends moving forward with Allen Owens Construction for this repaving in the amount of $95,375.
Can I have a motion?
I'll move the Facilities Committee recommend that the full commission award a contract in the amount of $95,375 to Allen Owens Construction and Paving Incorporated for the paving of Arnold Road due to the Pump Station 2002 force main replacement project.
I'll second the motion.
There's a motion and second. Any questions?
I do. What improvements does the county have planned for Arnold Road? Do we know that?
We spoke with them, this project kicked off a year and a half, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Once they found out we're doing this, they have none.
Yeah. Once we determined that we were going to put it in the roadway, their improvements seem to be delayed.
Okay, so the opportunity to co-op the,
We brought it up.
Paving is
We brought it up, and
delayed.
that's not one of their highest priorities.
understood. Is it possible that we might just only pave the northbound lane?
There's
Or the
one
northern lane?
there's one conflict area that we know we're going to have to deviate out of that northbound lane, and so rather than having a section of the southbound lane that's going to be patched, we just felt like it'd be better to go ahead and get it all done.
Well, it would be better, it's just, it's our nickel that's being spent, not, for the betterment of it, that, we're just being a good neighbor.
Yeah,
Not- we're
pretty
not-
much we're being a good neighbor here.
We're
yes,
not
sir.
deriving any goodwill necessarily for it.
Well, speaking of being a good neighbor, we did meet. As we know, there is a very busy restaurant right there by that pump station. We had 4 staff members meet on site with the owners of that restaurant, work through our plans. They actually don't open for lunch on Mondays and Tuesdays, so we've committed to only performing work in front of their restaurant on Mondays and Tuesdays and having that section back open before they're open for
Yeah.
business.
Yeah, good plan. Okay, that's all I have.
No, nothing.
The only comment I have is, if you look at the proposals, Owens does not even mention where the work is. I mean, we can assume that that's correct.
Yes, sir.
And he has a completely different breakdown than Platinum does. And Platinum has a whole lot more as far as contract terms and everything. And I think before we start in the future, we need to maybe get a standard when we
We will.
get prices like this, so we can have making sure everybody's bidding apples and apples.
Yes, sir. To this and the comment earlier on the painting, we'll make sure moving forward we provide some type of, even for quoting, some type of bid form so everybody's got the same breakdown, so that we can get a comparison that may be a little easier to look over.
Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor? Motion carries 3-0. We'll move to the discussion section. Water production report, Mr. Burris.
Yes, sir. At the Brunswick District, major changes that you'll notice here is Howard Coffin ran considerably less than it previously did. And Goodyear Park picked up a lot more than it had in previous months. That's because the work we were doing in Goodyear Park to redo some of the SCADA system and electrical components there was completed. We brought it back online, and we took down Howard Coffin to do the exact same improvements there. So those stations run in tandem for the south end of Brunswick, and so as one goes down, the other one will pick back up. Brunswick Villa helps push towards the south as well, so you see a slight increase from Brunswick Villa. Still working through some of the issues to make sure we can get all of our wells more balanced based off of some of our looping projects that we have completed and intend to complete. We want to make sure we're balancing those well run times as best we can. Water use was down for the month of September. When we get to the wastewater report, you'll be the rainfall was a little higher, so we expected less water use, much less outdoor water use for the month. As far as taste and odor complaints, 2 for the month. One of them was actually low pressure situation. Once we brought the Howard Coffin well down, started having some low pressure in a couple areas on the south end. And then one of the other ones was dirty water in upstairs of a mostly not vacant but not a lot of water use building on the 3rd floor. All the results on the bottom floor were good to go, but they did have some discolored water on the 3rd floor. So
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
The FLETC, the numbers seem to be all over the place on there. Is that has to do with their population of people on there, or?
no, sir. Back in June, we finished a connection on Canal Road and Glencoe for that water system.
Right, yeah.
And when we completed that, the FLETC well started running less and less, and it appears that the I-95 well, that's the next column over, has picked up the slack there.
Okay.
What we are doing, as we're looking at this data, we've got another project to loop areas in the North Mainland. Once we get all these looped, we're gonna see how it stabilizes, and then we've got project money to put in pressure reducing valves to try to create pressure zones, and once we get all these loops completed, we'll be able to figure out exactly where we want to put those at.
So
The
it's more
expectation was
about balancing.
more about balancing. The expectation
okay.
was that FLETC was going to pick up once that connection was made, and it actually did the reverse.
I see that, yeah.
But with that being said, we're not having widespread issues with pressure problems out there, so the system's
Okay.
still operating well. We just got to figure out how to balance it a little bit
Okay.
better.
All right.
FLETC currently is only running when we manually force it to run.
Okay. But they have plenty of water there.
They have plenty
Pressure,
of water.
No problem, okay.
We're starting meeting with FLETC quarterly, and we met with them a week and a half ago, and no concerns.
Okay.
Does this have our Miocene wells in also?
Yes, sir. Golden Isles 1 and 2 are both Miocene wells. Yes, sir.
Are we running them, we still have to run those?
Yes, sir.
When the Canal Road well is built, will we have to run those?
Their usage should lessen, particularly Golden Isles 1 should lessen because they're would be serving a lot of the same area. And then once the elevated storage tank at exit 42 is constructed, we can certainly set Canal Road and Ridgewood to be the primary wells to fill that up, and let Golden Isles 1 and 2 be the backup wells for that tank.
You know, that canal, is that there at the intersection with Old Jessup?
It's at the intersection of Glencoe and Driggers and Canal Road. There's a green building. If you're going north on Canal Road, cross Glencoe onto Harry Driggers, there's a green building to the left there.
Oh, okay,
That will be converted like we did the Ridgewood well.
got it, okay.
It was originally a fire well, right?
Yes, sir. What used to be called a fire well, which EPD does not acknowledge as a term anymore. So it's a production well that does not have treatment capacity, so we can't run it for treatment. We would kick it on in the event of a tremendous need like a fire.
Okay. So, did I misunderstand a conversation some time ago? Do we own a plot of land there at Canal and Old Jessup? Some pond-
Canal and Old Jessup.
Pond there.
Yes, we do own a pond right there. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Right there. Yes.
It's just the other end of the canal.
The other
there.
end of the canal. That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And then on St. Simon's, again, a lot less outdoor water usage. So it flows down about 400,000 gallons a day for the month, but across the board, you saw similar usage to where we had been previously. So just slight reductions everywhere. Did have one taste and odor complaint. Actually had one complaint 3 times. Same location. It was a water softener issue where media from the water softener was coming out in the faucet,
Ooh, ouch.
creating some quite discolored water at the
Imagine
time.
so.
Do we recommend water softeners?
We do not. And then at South Mainland, again, less water usage, not as much as we saw in the other areas because that system has got less usage in general. But you see pretty consistent there. Fancy Bluff well, we're actually working on how to stabilize the flows at Fancy Bluff due to some fluctuating pressure conditions at the very south end of our system, near the Clearwater and was that Satilla Sands subdivision?
That and Clearwater,
Yeah, and Clearwater down there. It appears what is happening, we've put pressure recorders on the pump station down there that has a water service to sea. It appears what is happening is when the Fancy Bluff well is shutting off, there's a temporary drop in pressure. Goes away in a couple of minutes, but every time the well shuts off, we're having a drop in pressure. It's still above requirements, but if you're losing 10 or 15 PSI, it's noticeable on your faucets. So trying to figure out how to work through that until we can make some improvements potentially with a elevated storage tank down on the south end. As soon as the well kicks back on, pressure comes back up. It's just that intermediate period where the well has kicked off.
Do all of our wells kick on based on tank levels or pressure?
The majority of them tick all based off tank levels. We do have a couple of wells that run off of local pressure transducers. But if you do look at the graph for the South Main, then you'll see that it is highly consistent water usage at the South Main one, month to month.
Okay. Let's proceed to the wastewater.
Yes, sir. The first thing I'll draw your attention to is the flow rate at Academy Creek. You notice it is substantially higher than it has been. About 4 million gallons a day above average for where we've been for the last 21 months or 20 months before this month. And that is because data shows 10 inches of rain for the month. Based off of some of the reports I saw, based off of one significant rain event we had the second week of the month, I actually think that number is low. I saw reports for that day in some areas getting 6 to 8 inches of rain. And we had some very elevated flows for about a week and a half because of that. Again, the data only shows a 2.83 inch rain during that time period, but of course, those of us that were out there could probably argue that pretty strongly. So 10.7 million gallons going out, which was still below the 13.5 that we have permitted at Academy Creek. You see the additional rain coming in the system there. Influent concentrations well down from where they typically are due to that dilution coming in from rainwater. Plant was within permit for every week and every month, but we did have some elevated effluent conditions just because of the amount of water that was coming through the system for the month. So preliminary data for the first couple of weeks of October have got back down to where they had been the previous months, even a little lower in some instances. But all in all, BOD removal 94%, TSS removal 95% at Academy Creek. Pretty consistent given the amount of flow. The day we got all the rain, the flow for the day was over 20 million gallons.
I think we got more rain that time than we did from the storm, didn't we?
We got
Way more.
substantially more rain that day than we did from the storm. We got a lot more wind from the storm, but yes, a lot of rain fell that day. And again, the available data online says 2.5, 3 inches of rain. I think that's at least half of what it was. We did find yesterday, this is not the entire contribution, we did find a ring and cover that had been completely removed from a manhole in a ditch. And we think it got knocked off likely when somebody was bush hogging the area. But we could not find the ring and cover, so we expect some salvagers have taken that off our hands. But a new ring and cover has been installed, so you can imagine a 24 or 28 inch manhole cover with nothing there, the amount of water that can pour into that when that ditch gets full.
And where was this at?
This was up off of Kate Road. I always question when those are removed, which typically happens when somebody hits it with a bush hog, how they did not realize they had hit a concrete structure with a bush hog. Seems like we would have been made aware of this, but that did not occur.
Usually the mechanic knows.
Usually the mechanic knows very quickly. I suspect that he had to stop what he was doing for some period of time.
Bush hog may be at the scrapyard along with them.
Yes, so, but with that being said, if you look at the chart, there's a clear indication that the flow went up last month, and also the gray bar there, a clear indication that it was wet. So still working on some I&I reduction opportunities. And to that point, when we go to Dunbar, we actually violated the permit at Dunbar due to excess flow for the month and for a weekly, our weekly limit is 5, our monthly limit is 4. We had a weekly maximum of 5.1 for or 5.2 for a week, and the monthly was 4.1. That's 2 violations we had due to the rainfall for the month of September. But with that being said, the plant handled it very well. So all the effluent concentrations are very much in line with where we had been. 97% removal of BOD, 98% removal of TSS. No additional impacts to the streams there from poor treatment, just the amount of water that was coming into the head of the plant. And data from St. Simon shows 4 inches of rain for, I believe it was September 9th was the heavy rainfall day, and over 10 inches for the month. there at that facility. And down at Southport, you see a slight increase in flows at Southport, but that is a pretty tight system. So, 449,000. We have ordered a new influent meter for that facility because we keep getting inconsistent readings and it keeps getting calibrated, and the calibrations don't seem to change the flow rate any, even though it's being calibrated and the flow rate influent is half of the effluent. So we've ordered a new meter. We'll get that installed. Plant performed relatively well for the month, 94% BOD removal, 98% TSS removal, down at exit 29 for the month.
On Dunbar, looking at that, we got yellowed out on the flows, the yellow colors or orange or whatever color they are. And then down below the 4.2 and the 4.1, that's over the permit.
That's correct.
And whether obviously the 103%, the 92 to 93, what are all those yellowed out for?
Essentially, I changed the color if it's over 80% of the flow for the month, just to kind of give us an indication if we're getting in that zone.
Okay. Now, right now, we've got a design build for Dunbar. And by adding another clarifier, we can get the permit up to 5.
We'd have to, of course, get the increased permit, assuming the permitting would be no problem, yes.
And isn't it the design builder to submit the information for the permit?
No, sir. They will submit the design builder will provide us with the DDR, but the decision was made at that point that staff would internally submit the actual permitting documents.
Are they proceeding to give us that information so we can get that permit moving?
We did not elect to install the third clarifier, so we have not gotten any information on that yet because we couldn't actually ask for the new permit without the clarifier.
Well, we'll put the clarifier in when we get the permit.
Okay.
So why don't we go ahead and get the information so we can be getting the permit in? What I don't want to do is have the permit be the last thing we get, because we need to get the permit.
Okay, we can certainly
From what
begin.
I see here,
We can certainly begin to to work on that. Yes, sir.
because I think we've got at least one commissioner who says there's going to be some more building on St. Simons.
Certainly, looking for some I&I reduction opportunities on the south end of St. Simons, as well as to help with that.
All right. Any other questions? Okay, good report. Now, the fun part, the photos. Capital project report, Mr. Klein and Mr. Burrs.
All right, the first project we've got, which is a good thing, the oldest project we have on the list is the Academy Creek project, which is a tremendous improvement of where we had been as far as our oldest project, so knocking some of these old ones off. Academy Creek, very nearing completion. Currently, they're working through some of the issues that we had with equipment as it was installed. Right now, they're installing the remaining odor control covers on the influent portion. You see the gentleman there holding one of those aluminum odor control covers. They are supposed to be finished with those installations by end of day tomorrow because they are supposed to fly back to California on Friday. So I hope they're through by the end of the day tomorrow. And then next week, they will be here to do the official startup on the actual biological odor treatment system. They will also be in town to install the hydraulic panel for operation of the sludge offloading facility next week, and SCADA will begin being worked on that week as well. The following week, on the 31st, we should have representatives from Aqua Aerobics here to replace some equipment on the filters that needs replacing. The paving has been completed, as you can kind of see in that top photo there, new blacktop down there. Few punch list items we got to work through on the paving, but it does look considerably better, and the drive with your vehicle is much smoother than it was 3 weeks ago. So making progress there. I actually walked the facility. Walked the facility today and making some definite improvements there compared to 2 to 3 years ago when we kicked the project off for engineering. So just, this project is another example of some of the supply chain issues we've had. Some of these issues have come up. As you install this equipment, it's taken 8 weeks, 12 weeks to get the replacement parts in here to actually fix this, the things, so. Good shot with the drone there by Jason on that top photo.
Yeah.
Yeah, the asphalt looks like a picture frame for the plant.
It does, yes, sir.
Yeah.
We actually have lines on the parking spaces now, so folks are gonna have to figure out how to park. All right. Mr.
Okay.
Klein?
All right, next project on the list here for photos is Arco area. Again, you can see along the railroad right-of-way there is our materials and the few structures we have on hand. Contractor has been installing sewer, but has practically used up what's available, or on hand at least. But good project to drive through and see what's going on. A couple other pictures here. You can see a lot of activity going on. Then in the bottom right-hand corner is the product superintendent, Mr. Aaron Beckworth.
Todd, the second photograph.
Yes, sir.
Is that down the middle of a street? So they got the whole street blocked there, is that
Mhm.
correct?
In some areas, there's practically no other option than to disturb the,
And
The
that's a
street.
sewer line, right? Are they having a well point much of the sewers?
yes, sir, they're having a well point along.
Some
the
of
way.
these are 12, 15 foot deep, so
Yes,
absolutely would have to well point those.
yeah. Which widens your footprint as well as trench boxes and
Yeah.
everything else. It gets in there, larger equipment, larger construction footprints. Spoils. Okay, but good project. We can't wait to get all those folks tied on. Several of the people out there are already tied on the water.
Yes.
The new water system, so going well. Galvanized replacements, in-house project. We have our water distribution crew. Supervisor, Mr. Alvin Hall, supervising.
Is it always the same crew that's doing all this? They seem like they're having
It's-
an awfully good time.
Well, with that being said, they have,
Two
There's-
are out of uniform.
there's 18 staff members in water, 18 positions in water distribution, down a couple of staff members right now. So you will see a lot of the same people showing up at water distribution just because there's only 2 or 3 crews that do this type work.
Okay.
So you do see a lot of the same folks. We do have 2 staff members there that do not appear to be in safety gear and/or appropriate JWSC uniforms. But good to get them started early so that they know what to do by the time they're of appropriate working age. We have drilled, I believe, somewhere in the neighborhood with the contract we let a couple of months ago. We drilled somewhere in the neighborhood of a mile of pipe already with that contract. And they're tying them over in the cul-de-sac areas of St. Clair. There's several cul-de-sacs back in St. Clair that's been drilled. And then they've moved over to Menendez and Rivera areas. I forget the name of that neighborhood back in there off of Frederica right there. So our crews will come back, tap the lines, set the new meters once it's been drilled and tested.
I think they've been keeping Mr. Dennis busy with the drilling.
We very much
Correct.
have, and then recently, we got quotes for materials to purchase to do the Wesley Oaks subdivision. That loop replacement that needs to be done, the separate project, and we're gonna utilize that drilling contract to do that. And then looking at upsizing some lines on one of the major cross streets in St. Clair. There's currently on, I believe it's called Cooper Avenue, there's a 2-inch line that runs the length of that, it's about 1,500 feet. A little longer than we'd like to run 2-inch lines, so we're gonna bring 8-inch lines part of the way down, install new fire hydrants, and then drop down in the middle. Should drastically improve water pressure, not just because of the galvanized section being removed, but because of larger lines coming into this, that street. We do have a county employee that lives in one of the residences that has now been tied onto the new water system in St. Clair, and he says marked improvement in the water pressure.
Sure.
Next project is the meter replacement project. Some good action shots of M&E out there.
We're up over 16,000. Do you know the number now?
16,439, I believe.
So almost 16.5 on the,
So over 50% then.
over 50%, yes, sir.
That's great.
And of note, we did replace the 3 large meters at the hospital the beginning of October. By all accounts, no real concerns. And anytime you can make large meter change outs with a facility as critical as hospital and not have any concerns, that's a good day.
Yeah.
So
Consumption go up?
we're
We-
cataloging to confirm.
Okay.
I only had the data for about a week yet, so we don't want to make any drastic statements until we've got a little more data.
How about the leak reports? Are we still getting a lot of the new meters that are coming in, where we're indications of that?
We are, yes, sir, and continuing to follow up on those with the customers.
Right, I know we were sending letters out at some
We're
point.
sending letters out, and we've had the ability to text customers for, if they opt into it, for disconnection notices.
Right,
We're also allowing people to opt into leak adjustment, or not leak adjustment, continuous usage notifications as well, so we can text them instead of having to send them a letter, so they can get their leak fixed more efficiently.
well, that's good, because postage is going up.
Yes.
All right,
All right. Next project we'll take a look at is Dunbar Creek Water Pollution Control Facility, rehab.
all right.
Yes, sir. Not a tremendous amount of work that has went on at Dunbar Creek. We have had the aeration basin painted, and that is complete. That tank is not back in service because we are waiting on diffusers to show up to install the new diffusers. Working with our contractor, who is working with the supplier to try to get half of the diffusers, because we're replacing them in both tanks, to get half of them delivered early so that we can get that tank back in service. They did repair a collapsed line that showed up. That has been completed, and that is back flowing. And going through current exercise to, as Commissioner Turnipseed brought up earlier, where you see on that middle photo, those filters, and behind that the UV system, those are being relocated into that structure in the very back of the photo. Right there would be where we want to locate a third clarifier. Currently, as the way the road comes in, we would not be able to locate a clarifier the exact same size of what's already there. So we're actually getting the design build team to look at shifting the road into the pond that you see, the tree line there, having to fill in a portion of that pond and getting pricing on what that would look like to allow at a future date, if we wanted to do a full-size clarifier as our third clarifier, at least get the numbers to see what the increased cost for the roadway would be. So still just waiting on materials for most of this work to show up, and the diffusers were quoted January. I think the UV and the filters were April or March, April timeframe, and May, June timeframe. So we're just waiting on stuff to show up out there.
How long did it take to repair that line that collapsed?
The line was repaired in about a week. Had to backfill it. It was flowing in about a week, but they once backfilled. It took about 2 weeks to do the whole job and get it back.
And that
Grassed.
was, how large was that line?
It was a 30, well, the drawing said it was a 36-inch line, and then we got down on it, and it was a 30-inch line.
Okay,
So
yeah,
the good thing is that the design engineering firm that did the design and had the record drawings is the design partner on the design build team. So we instructed them to update their record drawings.
okay.
We did source some 36-inch pipe very rapidly and then didn't end up needing it because we had 30-inch on hand, but it happens.
That's the top left photo, the entrance to improvements in the back, so the future access from Sea Island Road is gonna be a big plus.
I want to add that we're spending a lot of money at both of the plants, but we need to spend more money. So I've asked Andrew to come up with a list on Academy so we can prioritize the additional things we need to do. Because both of these plants have been neglected for a long time.
Mhm.
More so Academy than Dunbar, but they both need that. In Dunbar, we need the additional capacity. So anyway, I think he's gonna come up with some other ideas for us to spend at both plants pretty soon.
I can always come up with ideas at a wastewater plant.
Right,
I mean, that's the heart of our system, those two
Right.
plants.
and we need to be prepared for the future with that, so, for sure.
Well, the 2 aeration basins at Dunbar suffice for a 5 million gallon.
Currently, Ty, can you zoom in on that north basin? Okay, you see where those pipes come in at the top of that basin? Right now, there are not diffusers actually underneath that influent because of the way it was put in when it was an SBR facility. So about 20% of the outer ring does not have diffusers in it. There's diffusers in the center and all along the other edges. What we're putting back is we're gonna put diffusers across the entire thing. So we're putting more diffused air capacity in there.
20%.
We're adding 20% already, so we probably would be able to do it without adding the additional diffusers to go to 5 without having to construct additional aeration capacity, but adding more diffusers and getting better mixing in there is gonna help that even more.
Yeah, and it gives you more flexibility when you have to do maintenance on one of them.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
But to your point, we had all the rain in the month. We only had one basin online, and other than the flow being too high coming in and out, the plant handled it very effectively.
In essence, the plant is working on one aeration basin and just at 4 MGD capacity.
Yeah.
So theoretically, it could almost go up to 8 MGD. That's a good shot right there of it.
The tank is a now bright white, which is odd for a wastewater plant.
Can you print out a copy of that and also the one on Academy?
Sure.
Supposed to have a copy of, because if you zoom in on that and look at the entrance road coming in, see the entrance road off of Sea Island Road.
Right.
And then if you draw a circle, can you draw a circle where that clarifier is, Todd? You know how to do
I can't in Google Maps, but
that? Right there.
So essentially, the way the road currently comes in, when that stuff gets moved, those are 80-foot diameter clarifiers. We could fit a 60-foot diameter clarifier without relocating the road.
Right.
And a 60-foot clarifier would allow us to meet 5 MGD requirements. What I've requested the design build team to do is how far would we have to shift the road into the pond and fill the pond in to put an 80-foot clarifier in there so that all 3 of them are the same size.
And that pond is on our property, and it was there for holding when the plant was originally built.
Right.
And it's not being used for anything right now except for gators to run the boat.
Right. And is there a benefit to matching the same thing we have now, or would
Well, the
it?
one benefit to matching what we have now is when you take one of the other clarifiers offline, you've got the same setup you have now instead of having one that's, a quarter smaller.
Right, okay.
But we could get away with a 60-foot clarifier. It would work. 100% it would work.
If we have to fill part of the pond, are there some environmental requirements that are?
We'd have to go through some of that, make sure that we had good base to actually fill in and pave over, so. And we'd likely have to end up, well, not likely, we would guardrail it just to be safe as well, if we get closer to the pond.
Absolutely, yeah.
All the other unit processes already are being constructed to handle the 5 MGD.
Yeah, so the UV that we're putting in, the filters that we're putting in, we're putting it in with the capacity for 5, even though we only have a permit for 4, so that if we ever decide to go to that next step, it's just the addition of a clarifier to get it done instead of having to add a whole bunch of stuff.
It's good to be prepared.
What's the depth of that pond? 5 or 10 foot?
Oh,
It's
that is-
probably 5 feet at the most.
Basically, just got a lot of grit in it at this point.
just deep enough to keep the cattails from growing, but, yeah.
It will tighten up pretty well if you de-water it right.
Okay.
So, hitting, you get any more projects on there? Is that the end of the picture report? Yeah. So hitting some of the design projects, or projects not currently under construction. We have ordered all the generators, going through submittal review for the generators, but just a reminder from when we awarded these 2 months ago, I believe, maybe 3 months ago, that's a minimum 12-month lead time on the smaller ones and up to 84 weeks on the largest generator we're ordering. So we have that. Let's see, going down the list here, Community Road, I believe we've got the 90% drawings on Community Road currently under review right now. So hopefully we'll have that out for bid in the next couple of months. Canal Road Water Production Facility is at the 60% stage.
90%. So
90%
next
stage.
month, we should have bid docs.
Next month, potential bid docs on that Canal Road well facility. North Mainland Water Loops, the design is complete. We are waiting on permitting,
Permitting.
core permitting for the wetlands. Is that correct?
Right.
And then pump station 4002, 4001, and 3101 is 3 separate listed projects. We're having engineering done together, and we're gonna bid it out together. That should be out for bid in 2 weeks. Finalizing everything this week. Next week, I'll have a chance to make sure everything's good to go so that we put it out for bid the following week. And pump station 4044 rehab's about 90% complete as well on design. So a lot of projects that should be out for bid in the very near future. And then down the list at pump station 2033 and 2034 rehab, we're gonna do engineering in-house on those 2 pump station rehab projects. So. And if you see on the second page, Wesley Oak Circle is a separate project talked about earlier. We're sourcing materials and going to use our directional drilling contract to install those larger lines around that loop in Wesley Oak Circle. On our EVA report, mostly consistent where we've been previous months. Have seen a slight slowdown in some of our projects, so hopefully getting some of these new projects out for bid and under construction will speed that up. Hit a little bit of a lull the last couple of months on getting things done, trying to get that momentum back. Finishing up some larger projects with the North Mainland SPLOST project wrapping up Academy now, so need to get some more stuff going so we can get our momentum back on these projects.
That it? Any questions? Good report, fellas. Meeting's adjourned.